think about a Black future, the Black future that I think we're on track for when we look at the numbers and we look at science, tell us that it's a warning. It's a red alert. We're not going the place we want to go. So we want an alternative future. We want to look at the data and the stats and say, okay, what's the future that is alternative to this? That being the case, power is the only thing I want us to have in the future. So we can talk about everything else. We could be, super articulate about a lot of things that we would talk about. But the thing that we are missing that the whole world respects is power, right?
It is Freedom Friday, and you are still not free.
Hello, friends and family. It's another Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after this Friday with the gang and me. Now, we leave Black History Month. We go into an election year. By all intents and purposes, it looks like we might end up with a more autocratic regime than we have right now after November. So how do we get our mind right for the fight for the year ahead?
Yeah, man, this is this Black future is right ahead of us, right? Like, how are we going to interact, survive, thrive, but also lift as we climb as we're doing this. I think, I can't help but to think about, when we think about Black future, thinking about Malcolm, as we know, last week, the 21st was, the anniversary of his martyrdom, up in New York. And one of the things that he would talk about, the positive, is like Black people have to stop being political chumps. We have to mature. We have to use strategy. We can't just be, giving away votes as if they're, day after Halloween candy. You're talking about like giving stuff away. That's how we give away our vote. It's like, well, it's the day after. We're just passing it out. It's on clearance. Our vote should not be on the clearance rack ever. And, holding people accountable, and not being political chumps. I think that is the most critical part, is like, what is the strategy? Not out of fear, like, oh, that mask are worse than that one. Oh, this one is da da da. Like, no. What is the demand? What is the expectation? And start locally, but it should also have a national impact.
What do you think, Ish? Preparing our mind, getting our mind right for the fight ahead.
Well, I've been, every time I reference what we're about to face, folks are like, oh, no, like that can't be like that. And it's like, no, we got to really start seriously thinking about what's happening. And it's not just, potentially another Trump presidency. I'm looking at what the Supreme Court is doing right now. They're gutting every type of regulation and precedent that's been in the books for like the last 20, 30, 40 years in the benefit of financial interest. So like we're talking about something larger on the horizon right now. We're talking about a reshaping of this society to be a naked blanket, white supremacist, F you pay me type of situation, a level that I don't think folks are fully prepared to deal with. And, that might lead to certain things where folks lose faith. With a lot of times, we've talked about this numerous times, a lot of folks done lost faith. But at the same time, I think that as this mythology starts to unravel with Trump as the next president potentially, and as the Supreme Court kind of guts individual rights while also uplifting the rights of corporate interest, you're really going to see some stuff come to the head. And the way to prepare is, number one, educate yourself, talk to your babies about what, rough future might be lying ahead and how they need to prepare themselves. But then also at the same time, don't shy away and be like, oh, well, we have to be compliant. We have to, in order to maintain your comfortability, you got to be quiet. I think, if anything, we need to really step up our game and speak even much more truth to power. Because like ultimately at the end of the day, it's the silence of our friends, not the violence by our enemies, which will really hurt and cut deep.
Man, it ain't just our friends. Sometimes it's the silence of us.
Right. That part. You said so much. You always say so much that makes me think like 30 things at once. Like, who are our friends? Like, honestly, like, just give me a rundown. Like, let's take an inventory, right? Because it feels like we are people without a friend. It feels like oftentimes like we're the friend of everybody, right? Oh, you're gay, you want some rights? Okay, yeah, okay. You Chicano and you want some rights? Oh, okay, yeah, sure, yeah. We'll be out front with you. Oh, you're Asian, you want some Asian rights? Okay, yeah, yeah, we'll be out front with you. Oh, you women, you want to vote too? Okay. Yeah, yeah, we'll get it right on in front with you. Oh, you all want to join our civil rights ticket? Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Y'all come on in. Let's all just join the civil rights train. Oh. Oh, yeah. So when it's time for us to get something, now you don't want us in Harvard because you want all the seats. Oh, and suddenly we're stopping you. Oh, we're discriminating against you from having something in the system that you have benefited from us. Oh, and by the way, for many of y'all, I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but damn, let's just have a memory. Some of y'all only in this country because of the Immigration Naturalization Act that we pushed, right? Like, so the civil rights movement included some of y'all being able to get your asses over here and be here for 5 minutes before you start hating us before you start. So, anyways, that was just an aside. You said our friends, and I was just like, well, damn, I need a list. Like, I need shit. Can I get a spreadsheet? Something?
Well,
Damn.
John Hendrik Clark has a whole thing where he's like, "You have no friends. You want to know who your friend is? Look in the mirror." And I think that speaks really to kind of the situation we find ourselves in. And you're right, like the niceness, the emphasis on humanity, even though that's necessary and that's the only reason why we have like the freedoms that we somewhat enjoy today, is because people fought for those things. But like at the end of the day, being chucked to the side and being vilified while also being treated in a way that this society has defined folks, unfortunately happens too often.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of that skit that you introduced me to um, back in the day with the boy putting his dirty shoes on the couch, or the what was it, or the purple couch, or Eddie Murphy couch. Like, that's how I feel. Like, we've like fought, bled, sacrificed. Like, and one of the reasons why they're trying to erase our history out of their schools, out of the wherever, because it's an indictment. Malcolm always talking about the indictment of America, right? Like what they propagate, but what actually happens. There's no group, I would say Native Americans and Black folks are the quintessential indictment of a country, of a false narrative, of the moral ineptness of like this country, but that propagates through media, through their film, through Hollywood, through all the other things of like, oh, we are the champions of democracy. Show a picture of Ruby Bridges. Oh, we're the champion of democracy. Oh, show them all the soil that's collected in the from where people have been lynched and hanged and castrated. Oh, where the essential democracy. Oh, show them where the indigenous people were and where they are now, right? Like, so that indictment piece, I think, is absolutely part of what we have to make sure that we are still holding up high, that we're teaching about, and again, not in this kind of hand wringing and sad singing piece, but actually with a level of defiance, actually with a level of honoring the brilliance of our people, right? And so for people to then have all of that happen so that they can actually set up shops to participate in things, to run for governor, Haley, all of these things on the backs of folks, and then you get there and then you're like, oh, that didn't really happen, and putting your feet on the damn couch in our house. Like, we built this house. We built this, and your freaking dirty, nasty boots are up on the couch, and you're being disrespectful.
Yeah, it's funny watching like Vivek and Nikki Haley and lots of Indian Americans. Just to be very honest, like if we just talk about things straight up, it seems to be a thing. So one of the things is people don't talk about hyperselectivity, which is a concept within immigration. And what it basically means is that what we think are an immigrant population where everybody is equal and everybody came from poor places is actually not true. When they opened up immigration, they started increasing the expectation of what you had to have to be able to come. So a lot of these people who come here where we're like, well, they were immigrants and they've made it, or what? Well, they've made it because they've been hyper selected to have been of the upper caste of the caste systems that they came from, right? So they didn't come from the poorest parts of the villages that they came from. They came from caste systems of which they were the white people at the top of their caste system, no matter how brown they are, right? Like, so they come here and they're here for 5 minutes and then they start saying things like, we've never been a racist country. Well, honey, you haven't been here. Maybe you don't think so because you haven't been here. There is no we. I don't know which we you're talking. Oh, when you say we have never been a racist country, I hope you're talking about, for the last 5 to 6, 7 minutes you've been here. And then we can argue about that too, because we have been in those last 5 minutes. But you seem to be missing 200 years and discounting a great number of people's lives that died, actually, so that you could have all the rights that you have and so that you could be
Yeah,
here
well,
the way
as you
that you're here.
mentioned, yeah, sorry, Chris.
No, go
And
ahead.
as you mentioned before, like even Nikki, where was her father? Just not just her 5 minutes, but her father. And as you said, we're friends to
Worked
others. Where
at
did he work? Where
HBCO,
did
HBCU, and why? Why did he have to work at a HBCU? Because we're a
This is
racist
why I missed the
country.
classroom though, right? Like this is
Dummy.
this is exactly why. Because these are the kind of things that would be like, you know what? Like, yeah, let's say it's not racist. Hey, have the kids actually look at, okay, what's her lineage and where did she get her, like her this genealogy of, oh, this is the purest form of a country and this is the best experiment of democracy. Just like, okay, well, here he come. Here's where they landed. Here's where they are. How do you think he ended up teaching here? Why do you think that? And have them start looking into, and again, using primary documents, because I'm sure there's some point where he shared why he was working at a HBCU and not elsewhere with this advanced degrees and all this kind of stuff, right? Like he probably, when he first came, never even heard of an HBCU. You know what I'm saying? So like really having students, and this way, people talking about like, oh, you're sharing your, like, no, we're sharing primary documents that are open to folks.
Even if
I'm
we
not
were
sharing
sharing
my
the other
opinion.
thing, like, they make us want to, like, oh, well, you're indoctrinating, blah, blah. Like, this system is so good for accusing you of what it's guilty of
What is
constantly.
guilty of? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, like
Oh yeah.
that's the when I talked last time and the last few times about the white supremacy being a white self cleaning oven, uh, that ability to accuse you of what they're guilty for is part of that. Like they live in innocence and you live in crime, even though
And
it's,
we believe it each time.
we
Like it,
do,
we'll
we
learn.
do,
We're like, oh, they did that,
we do.
and then the next day they'll do it again, and we're like, oh yeah, you know what I mean? It's like,
Surprised.
yeah, oh,
That's
oh,
like that's like the Negro Groundhog Day. It just keeps coming every year. We just like, we
bruh,
don't know what to do with it, right?
bruh,
Um,
it is exactly that.
um, so listen, I want to take a turn on this because I want to focus in on the what should we do and what, when we think about the Black future, like what's our path out of this? All of the statistics that govern our lives when we look at this, our standing and our statistics and our percentages of us within the country in the United States. If you were to put it all together and be a betting, thinking person, we're not on trajectory to have a great future. It's just the bottom line. We have to be honest about that. We think about a Black future. The Black future that I think we're on track for when we look at the numbers and we look at science tell us that it's a warning. It's a red alert warning. We're not going the place we want to go. So we want an alternative future. We want to look at the data and the stats and say, okay, what's the future that is alternative to this? That being the case, power is the only thing I want us to have in the future. So we can talk about everything else. We could be, super articulate about a lot of things that we would talk about. But the thing that we are missing that the whole world respects is power, right? Power to determine ourselves, determine our lives. So when we think about what's okay, well then if that's the goal, power, Black power, power to be able to govern self, power to self-determine how we exist in the world. Who's coming after that power? Who's stopping us? Who has been preventing us from having it? And what have been their means? And when I think right now, Ish, kind of you hinted a little bit at a part of the. You look at what they are doing to maintain power and keep power. They're doing things to the Supreme Court. They're doing things to the way you vote. They're doing things to the electorate. They're re-rigging all the systems to extend the life of white supremacy and make sure that we don't gain power, right? And then the very first attack that they made on all of this was attacking what we can learn, what can be taught in schools. So it feels to me like the full Full court press on their end involves courts, education, law, economics, commerce, and it might be something else. Help me out with this analysis if this is true, if this is places where we should put emphasis on where we focus, because we could focus on a lot of things, but should we focus on courts? Y'all mentioned voting earlier, education, commerce. Are these the things that where our power, our future power is going to lie?
Well, I first got to say that, Audre Lorde said you cannot dismantle master's house using master's tools. But even our misleadership within our own group, right? Amos Wilson's birthday was last week and last Friday. And he says, yet we have a leadership that makes us think that the only crime has been that we've been left out of the looting of these thieves. We get a leadership that cries about how we're only getting a certain percentage of the robbery and thievery. So I always want to caution folks of kind of like doubling down and defining the power and where that lies based on what structure we exist in right now. Because if you look around at the environmental crisis, when you look around at even their financial system overall, it is kind of like unraveling itself. It is unsustainable. And it's based off of the exploitation and increased exploitation of people, of resources, the extractive type of mentality. And that some folks argue, well, that's the train Black folks need to get on. They need to double down and do the same thing. And I would argue that actually is not the way, the path forward. The path forward is what you're describing right now. And that's defining and creating leadership where we're creating the means where power can be used to self-define ourselves, to reimagine the world, to transform kind of this sick, kind of crusted over system, which is killing so many people right now already. And I really need to just emphasize that all these, I understand, like, we got to have more jobs. We got to feed our babies. But at the same time, keep our eyes on the prize. Once you get in there, do not forget what you're fighting for. And then too many times folks get in there and forget what they're fighting for. And it's so important to keep the eyes on the prize that we're doing this for a deeper reason. What Malcolm was talking about, right? The liberation of our people. And that I'm down with anybody that's tired of this wicked system and willing to overthrow this exploitative reality. And we need to start thinking in those terms, because going down the path thinking that we're going to get power under this structure is somewhat illusionary, and I would even say pathological.
Before you jump in, Sharif, I want to argue about this. I want to argue, Ish. I want to fight. I want to fight you on this one. I want to fight you because, well, anyways, don't let me go verbose and go on and on and on. But number one, I do think you can tear down the master's house with the master's tools. I've always wondered about that Audre Lorde quote because I do think you can. I think you can. Black people are known for being inventive to get out of the bag anyway, any kind of way they can, right? Like we have invented ways of getting out of bondage in so many ways. That has actually been the hallmark of our history, is getting out of the bag in multiple ways. Like, if we got to poison you, we'll poison you. If we got to wait until you are asleep in the middle of the night, there's lots of different ways, right? And sometimes it's taking your tool, your gun, your weapon, your thing that you're using on us. You're cracking the whip on us, so we take the whip and crack it on you. That has been part of history. So I do think we can use their tools. I don't think that we can sit out of the reality of the world that they have created in the systems. So when it comes to voting and to owning things and to having Black businesses and to participating in the system from a position of strength, while we are on our way to redefining things, like you said, like we don't want to become them in the world that they lived in, but the way to get over them is actually to make sure that we're not losing power within the systems they have us in, right? They have us in systems where they consistently reapportion power to themselves and consistently make us sharecroppers to power. And I think that does happen. Like, okay, so I'm on the hook right now for this voting thing for this year. I don't know what to do about this, right? Because my purest heart wants to tell me what to do. My purest heart is bossy. It's like, don't participate in that nonsense. Don't let them do the lesser of two evils on you. Don't let them do this head job on you, vote blue no matter who. And then my kind of rational head job is like, okay, but there are consequences to who actually wins this November, and the consequences are vast. One side of that because we're not voting for people. This isn't a popularity contest. We're voting for policies, sets of policies. I just did a TikTok about this yesterday or so. We're voting for policies. We're not. So we need to get over this like personality thing. It's not people. It's this set of policies, and one set of these policies are clearly better for us than others. Right. When I look at the plan, the Project 2025 plan, and I will encourage everybody on every place I'm speaking right now, I will encourage you to Google this plan and read it. It is the most detailed telegraphing of what the right wing will do to us and to our system on the day that they regain power. It is the most complete. I think every American civics teacher should Google Project 2025, pull down the PDF and look at it. It's hundreds of pages long. It took 90 right wing organizations to write it. It has a plan for every department of government in the United States, and it can happen by executive order. If Trump wins, on the day that he wins, he can sign like 100 executive orders that really recreate the United States in the image of conservative white people, Christian white nationalist, right? So every civics teacher, I think, maybe you don't teach the difference between Biden and Trump, but you should teach the difference between the policies that they represent and the consequences of, listen, it might be the lesser of two evils, but one of the evils is a hell lot more evil for us, right? So I don't know what to do on that one because I feel you ish on one side. Like my purest heart is telling me, like, listen, Cornel West is he's the most viable moral character of all of them. But my vote for Cornel West can have my black ass in jail on November 8th or 9th.
Yeah, my mentality is we're delaying the inevitable, bro. This is a train full speed ahead. And I don't really hear too much disagreement that right there with what I was saying. I am a by any means necessary person. If whatever way we can resist and persevere and everything, like I'm an advocate for, I'm not going to poo-poo it, right? My concern then becomes where people measure that and say that's the victory. So like you have a black politician in high office, all of a sudden we've made it. Like that's what I'm concerned with. And we saw what that produced, right? We saw that after that, there's a backlash. And that's what this country has always been consistently about. So like even Trump, I'm more concerned about the dudes after Trump because that's not going away. When I was seeing interviews that, you know how the Comedy Central folks, they go out and like on the Daily Show and interview folks at Trump rallies. These people are straight up saying like, yes, I'm okay with a dictatorship. We need that here. We might need to lock up these people. So like that's the mentality that a large group of folks within this society is co-signing right now, like aware of co-signing. So like when we're saying all these things, unless we're delaying the inevitable, while also ignoring the fact that these folks come around every 4 years talking about eating fried chicken at tables, talking about how much they love black people, and then turn around and do the same thing all over again. So like I don't know about you. I just getting tired of this, and I need to see what it is for real, in order so I can point to the enemy, to my babies, and there's no argument about how they're the enemy.
Sharif, why did we allow Ish to come on here and blaspheme fried chicken? I feel like this is like the third or fourth time he has blasphemed on fried chicken.
He like,
I'm
look, if
hungry.
you eat, he like, look, if you eat it, pay for it yourself. Don't let them jokers bring it to you. You know what I mean? Like, them jokers bring it to you. They got some tricks up their sleeves. You know what I mean? Like,
it's hot chicken.
Yeah. Listen, man, this I mean, these are like real deep, profound issues. And I think there's not going to be any easy way. I 100% agree with this idea of like the policies, and stop, people getting caught up in the personality and really look, because it's the policies behind the people, or it's the people behind the people, as you said, like the judges behind the people, right? Like yeah, you can like that person, but still, what are they doing? What are the policy? People love, as we always talk about this, Billy Clinton was on 52nd Street at what's that restaurant? Big George's, eating hog maws and fried chicken. And people, I mean, man, I'm gonna try to find the picture that was in the paper about the throngs of folks who were out on. I ain't never seen 52nd Street that crowded. It looked like a daggone Malcolm X rally when he had, back in the day in Philly. That's how many people were out for this Joker, who then sent y'all to jail, sent us to jail, right after licking his fingers. Say again, Chris. You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute there. I was just saying that was the first black president, so of course we had to like show up.
Yeah, and they still celebrate, and I can't help but to think, Dr. Aisha Imani, love her, like Black Educator Hall of Famer here in Philadelphia. One of the things that she said is like, we got to stop, but we got to man. She was talking about this like as far as like how we help educate our youth, and one of the things that she talked about was that we have to make sure that they understand that just upward mobility is not the win, because that's the easiest thing for people to exploit, the individualism. And when you talk about like gaining power, power is with the people. That phrase isn't just a catchphrase to yell at a rally. It's the idea that in order to amass the power that you're talking about, whether it's economic power, whether it's political power, it has to be a group of people who are organized and can make decisions, to do and what not to do, to support and what not to support. But when it's, broken up into this like, oh, well, it's only all of our work, all of the sacrifices is only for upward mobility, then that means that once the individual happens, then we celebrate. And if it's a public figure, we all celebrate it and we become distracted. If it's individual, not only do we might pretend to celebrate, but we also detest it, right? Because that individual, the public one is very different. We're like, oh yeah, they're on TV. Oh, they're in this one. Oh, they're the first black, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, look at our people. We this black girl magic, this black boy joy, this individual. But when it's and that's at that public. But when it's in our community, not only do we, maybe give a false celebration, we also may have a level of, detestation for it, right? Because oh, that person is better than, oh, that person has moved away from us, oh, that person, oh, that person not helping us, right? Like, and then it's like two separate, it's almost like schizophrenia. It's two separate ways that we're looking at it. And she always said like that individual prosperity can get you drunk and misled, right? Because ultimately, the power comes from organizing. And just because those folks don't yell out power to the people, that's exactly how they rally. That's
hmm
exactly
hmm
how they organize. They'll tell you, oh, they're taking your jobs. They're organizing people. They tell you, oh, those black folks, they're criminals. They're organizing their people. They use the what do they call it? The dog whistles, the coded language, all the things. They're organizing the people because they believe power to the people. They're just not going to use that phrase. But you best believe, as you said, they interviewing those folks, they showing you like this is what it means to organize folks around a cause, even if it's the sickest cause out there, because that's what's always rallied them is the sickest
hmm
causes.
Well, y'all know I like to be provocative, so I like to just say stuff sometimes. So
Not you, Chris.
yeah,
Nah,
I just
I've
say
never.
stuff
No, Chris,
sometimes.
you're
It's
too
it's a
hard on
habit.
yourself, bro. I've never heard
Yeah, it's a habit, man. I do it. I got a habit, that's my habit. But so I'm gonna do that right now.
that.
And for people who have known me or have talked to me for years and have read my writing, what I am about to say and what is about to come out of my mouth is probably the most profoundly provocative thing that I could say, um, based upon what people know about me. And it is this:
Mhm.
what you just said is true. People, you got you got a couple of kinds of power, but there's organized money and there's organized people. So there's people. And when I think about the Black race in the United States, I think individualism has been bred into us over hundreds of years on purpose. And to see ourselves as competition and to see ourselves as in a game and to see ourselves as disconnected and atomized is on purpose, right? That breaking down of Black organizations and COINTELPRO, we talked about it, all that stuff, that is on purpose, right? But it has worked so well that it makes it hard for me to understand where the locus of control is going to come for organizing. Organizing us right now is like herding cats because people have been paid off in so many different ways. Let's not underestimate the system of hiring revolutionaries and creating different places for them to get paid and how they get paid and different ways for all of us. No shade on them. All of us are earning a living in different parts of an atomized system. It has put us through different doors into different rooms. So the ability to organize and liberate ourselves through organizing has been made. I need to emphasize this part of it. It is a smart, effective system for doing that to us. I'm not talking about something evil or magical or whatever. I'm talking about the system is literally outthought us. It's got
It's their
bombs behind
logical,
it. Yeah,
pragmatic way to,
but this isn't
subjugate.
that ain't the provocative part. You ready for the provocative part?
No, but go ahead anyway.
All right, here's the provocative part. And for you specifically, Sharif, this might be something you have a problem with. The only salvation that we have, the only possibility for a strong, well organized, powerful system of organizing rests with unions and labor. It is the only counterbalance right now that is already going, has millions of people, has a system, has a bank, has money, determines elections, gets people elected and unelected, and consistently has a program, besides education, consistently has a program for the uplift of the least of these. That is the provocative thing for me to say as Chris Stewart, who has criticized unions for almost all of my adult life.
Chris, you are off the rails, bro. You are off the rails. You are. Well, I was wondering like how far you were going to go, and you went there. That is a complete 180. And folks,
I
when you're
say
talking
that. Let
about
me say
people
this.
doing
Let me say this
something the
too,
opposite
Sharif.
of what they do, please stop saying it's 365 because that means you go back. But I'm still hearing that, and it,
180.
that
It's a
yeah,
180.
yeah. Keep going. Yeah, go ahead and
But
share.
let me
You
just say
said you were
this
going
one
to
part,
add.
and I'll shut up after this. I say this whether I like it or not. So I say this like it doesn't matter whether I like unions or not. It doesn't matter how I feel about them. If I'm just being pragmatic and I'm thinking, who has people, who has money, who has political power, who can put a check on the system when no one else can put a check on the system? Because the system, without unions, what's the next largest body of people that are organized with money and power to determine elections? And that who consistently do it for working people and for people that don't have PACs and super PACs and corporations. Take unions out of the game. Who's the next group of people that could give us the pathway to organizing ourselves?
Well, the
The church?
beautiful
No, I'm sorry. I
used to
don't mean to
be.
laugh. Jesus, I love you. Don't. No. No.
Used to,
No.
used to be, used to be.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, the beautiful thing about all of this is, that it's not perplexing because even though while this is very, very different stance from you, I feel like I should, stand up and do a jig, because I've been, even though I had like battles with you, I would always be like, bro, but this is, this is, but at the same time, Chris, in his analyses, has always preached this idea of interest convergence that we know Derek Bell and others would share. So, Chris is almost like, I always compare myself to the seething cauldron of conflicts. You know what I mean? I'm like, but Chris is a stronger version of this very same thing because, over these years, he would say this, but he was also, and I think because he was often looking at it just strictly from an educational policy standpoint and black children.
Hmm.
But also not only the interest convergence, but he would also talk about Chris. You would all I'm talking about you like you're not there. Like you know you would also talk about like just how there's intersectionality of through all of
Hmm.
this. And I
Hmm.
remember a point where Chris, where you were talking about like single vote issue. Is that what it's called? Single vote issue?
Single
And
issue
then
voter. Yeah.
single issue voter. And he would preach that, but then in the next conversation, he would talk about all these other factors. You know what I mean? So it's like, the passion of like knowing very clearly like that individual Black child, he would talk about the Monday morning question of that
Hmm.
grandmom. That could be not extremely consistent with what we need writ large from coast to coast, simultaneously, right? And these are the seething cauldron of conflict that we're always dealing with, the intersectionality of it all. But you're absolutely right. Like, what do you organize? You organize ideas, people, and resources. And with that, where is that encapsulated, right? And with that, yes, there'll still be infighting, and I don't think we should just, drop all our issues to do that. But where there is interest convergence, where there's this is what I think Malcolm would be talking about right now. What's the strategy and a path to win? Not win everything, but win. Talking about like a single issue. Here's a single issue, right? And who can we unify with to do this? Right? And the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Not forever. Doesn't mean
Hmm.
that doesn't mean
Hmm.
friend forever. It means on this topic right here. Let's, and I think that's a part of like us staying on focus. So yeah, it's very provocative from, your statements and your writings over the years. And also a level of consistency with how your brain
Hmm.
has been thinking about deep, complex, entrenched issues that ain't going away no time soon. This election is just like you know, a flare gun in a
Hmm.
lot of other issues that are happening. So, yes, provocative. I mean, you're gonna have some people probably, you know, unsubscribe from from your writing because of that, but you're gonna have a whole lot more
They already
who
gone, bruh.
subscribe to it because it's like, you know what?
They've
Yeah,
already
he's
gone.
right about this.
First of all, I appreciate you for what you just said. I really appreciate that because I am right now lost in thought, and I have been for over a year. To be very
Mm,
honest, I'm
yeah.
re-educating myself, and this has been a process over the last year and a half, 2 years. You can only show me once who you truly are before I really start rethinking my associations with the people. And they showed me enough with some of my former kind of colleagues and compartmentalized interest convergence friends. They showed me enough to make me rethink my entire life within the house, and I've been doing that for the last year. So I'm lost in thought. I'm like lost in. I'm awash in text and awash in relearning, right? And I think we all should be like over periods of time. We should like readjust. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And Ish, I didn't mean to cut you off. I would love to hear what you think about this idea about labor being kind of the most viable organizing, quickly accessible organizing power that we could have.
Well, I can tell you right now, I cut my teeth in a lot of the activism that I engage in from union organizing within the teachers union. I kind of came to that conclusion a while ago. Now, of course, there's like nuances, like Sharif just brought up, the inner fighting, how those interests converge and then dissipate over time. But I think it's a viable type of strategy. I think it's one of many different strategies that need to be undertaken, that folks should be considering. How do I get into unions? How do I affect policy and changes? When we did Black Lives Matter week at school, when we started in Philadelphia, that is all over the country right now. And we have major, the largest teachers union, the NEA, endorsed it. You know what I mean? Like, and is putting out like these things about educating children around Black history and about the centrality of Black lives when we talk about kind of what freedom justice looks like within this society. That was only possible due to union organizing, right? We started that within kind of a social justice oriented type of union. And so like that's one way, but we also need leaders in educational policy, right? From Washington on down, we need to engage in these hard conversations. And I think I'm so happy that you're seeing the light because uh, back in the day, when I first met you, I was like, oh, this guy's not going to bang with me, because of some of the stances that I thought you represented. But over time, I've gotten to know that you're intellectually honest, and when we honestly
Appreciate that.
look at this situation, yeah, no, bro, I really appreciate you because like when we look at this situation, yeah, like it ain't all good. We are kind of hustling backwards in too many quarters, and that we have to really rethink and be purposeful in the path that we're moving into, right? And then take that responsibility once we get into those rooms,
I
right?
think
Not the
Ish might have froze.
responsibility to get paid more and have a bigger house, but the responsibility that we have to our ancestors. And I think that you're speaking on that right now when we're talking about being part of labor, having those tough, rough conversations with folks who are working side by side next to each other. And this is the first time in history for a long period of time that we're even able to be in these platforms to speak these truths, and we should not take that lightly.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't so. You and I, we were never on opposing sides, but it's this thing about negotiating the differences so that we come to a collective point of being, right? Like a collective point of being. And I think right now, all the odds are against us having a collective point of being. So we just talked about organizing as one of the powers, because we got to start enumerating where are the powers. Like, what are our powers of education? What are our powers of intellect? What are our powers of economy? What are like, do we have a Chinatown? Why don't we have a Chinatown in every city, right? Like, um, um, Sharif, I think you have heard me say this before. George Fraser, who is a motivational Black thinker who brings together other motivational Black thinkers, has a video that says, "We are not without power, we're just a disconnected people." And he's like, I can show you beautiful Black people doing anything you want to do in the world. And the problem isn't that they don't exist. The problem is that they are disconnected and there is no power in disconnection. And he said, and to test this out, what I want you to do is go and try and start a Booker T. Washington delicatessen in Chinatown and see what happens, right? And you will see a level of organization and power that will readjust your thinking about where your powers lie. So I say all that just to say education obviously is a power, and I would wonder if you all think of anything. What's the biggest lever we could pull moving forward to make sure that we reassert our power within education, within the economy? I know I'm putting a lot on y'all, the courts, and then most importantly, where I want to end with that is, what are the tools? Like, do you have hope in like technology and AI? I was just talking to Dr. Cole, night before last, and he talked to me for a long time. We sat up until 1 o'clock in the morning talking, and he was talking to me about the power of technology that he is seeing in some of, he's a tech person, and then some of the things that he is using, he says, I see the future and the implication for these things, and it's going to miss our people. Like, someone else is going to pick up this tool and run and use it, and we are not going to be figuring out quickly how to use this to our advantage. So anyways, there's a lot there. If you want to touch any of it, touch it. But I would say let's end on the part around the tools and whether or not you are, I would say, optimistic about the tech tools that are coming down the pipe of not just being for somebody else, but being for us and being tools for liberation.
Well, look, I'll start there. I'm still more nervous about the technology aspect of it, both for its, when you're talking about, it's going to be a tool for the folks in power before it's a tool for others. That's the nature of things. New technology ends up benefiting those that 1% first, right? And just how they use it, and then how they turn it on. Like, even something that is good, how will they turn it on people, right? Like, and just seeing like these new voiceovers, right? Like, you won't even be able to determine whether that's a real video. That's a real. So while we're organizing, it can be used. What brings me, like, my biggest level of angst and anxiety is, this is a hyper version of COINTELPRO, possibly. As we're organizing with unions, but you get a video of Chris Stewart saying XYZ, and it's his voice, and it's his face, but they're not his words. And how can something like that be? Who's in the position to use something like that to disorganize the folks who are trying to mature in their organization?
See, that's scary. That's messed up. They'd have a video of me out there talking about all we need is watermelon or something like that, and
it'll
it
be
would
your
look like
voice.
me. That would be yes,
Look like
yes.
you, sound like you, mannerisms, and the only way that we would know that it ain't you is if we know you.
Right. Right. And even
That's
then,
the only way.
some of y'all might wonder.
Even
Some
then,
of
if
y'all might.
someone would get paused, like, "Oh, did you see that joint?"
Yeah. Yeah.
We'd be, Pony expressing it all over the internet, right? Like, so these are, and this is why I keep going back to the education and making sure, but it's the education, it's the trust, it's the community built, right? Like, because at some point, like the deeper, you know what I mean? Like, you think even back in the day, I think about our elders who be like, "Nah, I know what I'm seeing, but that ain't true." Right? Like, just
So
like with this matter of factness kind of
yeah,
thing.
jump in ish. I was going to say something. I'll add something in a second though. Go ahead, man. Jump in.
Oh, no, I think what Sharif just brought up is probably how it's going to be used. I mean, if we look at history, we look at historical precedent and the way power moves within this society, it will be used like that. It will also be used to dumb down our children even further if we're not purposeful with it.
Hmm.
Because we're talking about like teaching them to put this in, which I heard a lot of advocates for, which, I'm all about, but then teaching them how to think critically while doing that
Critical
is not
thinking.
is like usually left out of the conversation. And it's like the research is even showing that the highest level of metacognitive thought that folks can engage in when learning is actually handwriting, physically handwriting the stuff
Really?
that they're thinking about.
Oh
So
yeah,
like
Mm.
you process it differently when you're actually writing something.
and it sticks in your head more. So like when we're
Mm.
emphasizing these type of things, it's one thing to be like, okay, emphasize it, but we need to be like, yo, that child should not be typing papers on a computer until they about 16. We need to have them writing out thoughts. We need them to be reading real books, right? We need people buy books so they just can't throw something down the memory hole like in 1984 and say it never existed before. And like these are the realities which will happen. Like what is truth and what is not truth will even get more blurred than they are right now. And they're quite frankly pretty blurred. So like when we're talking about all these type of things, we also need to understand how it will probably be used against us and then speak upon that. We have to be prepared. We have to also
Proactively.
speak, yeah, proactively and not just like react to it. We need to really step into it and be like, yo, this is how we're going to navigate this reality as we move forward. Because I really get concerned that our babies will not be able to think for themselves and that what they are shown and taught and everything will become the measurement in which they measure their soul upon. And we already deal with that without this. I can only imagine this full blast going on when people aren't thinking for themselves.
So I agree with all of that. And I will say, I think all of us have been to the Smithsonian, the African American Smithsonian in DC, right? Have you been, Sharif?
No, I haven't paid yet.
Negro,
Really?
please. You got to go. It's free, bro. It's free. It's like Google. It's free.
I know.
Um,
I know.
and it's so amazing. Anyways, there is a part of that, I think, on the first floor, the second floor, where you can sit in these booths and you can watch. So it's an interactive place, and what you're watching are actually really well put together, kind of films and interactions that you can have that teach you. You're learning as like this is happening. So to rescue Dr. Cole's point, because he's a visionary and he's very very much on the tech stuff, and I'm tech
Hmm.
curious. I'm tech curious, I'll just say. But y'all saw these like expensive ass goggles that
Oh yeah,
Apple
as
has
soon as
put
I
out.
saw it, I thought about Dr. Cole. I'm
You know
like,
he's
he's
gonna
like,
have
"Yep,
them.
I'm on it."
You knew he was gonna have the first version, the
He's
very
just
first one
moving
to
stuff
roll
out
out,
the world.
and he
Yeah.
did. They came out. My man's got a pair of $4,000 ski goggles, right? Uh, ski goggles, straight up. But they're beyond ski goggles. They are immersive, powerful computers on your face. And what he said to me was very convincing and jarring in one way, which is the experience that you can have in one of these is like unlike anything else that you've had in terms of immersive AR, augmented reality we've seen before. And he's like, you could at some point be sitting in a church pew watching the ballot or the bullet speech in live in person, like the dude is standing right in front of you. That is the power of this thing, these goggles that you'll put on your head, is that you could be sitting in the church at the time that Malcolm is delivering one of the most important speeches of his life. And it wouldn't look like a book. It wouldn't look like a page. You would actually literally be walking through history in so many ways. And in that way, the tool itself is neutral. It's what you do with it. It's what you put in it right? Like it's a computer. So like what's on your
Yeah, like
hard
most
drive,
tech. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like, the Capital One is what's in your wallet. Well, this is like with technology, what's on your hard drive, right? And
Hmm.
so I think he's seeing like there's places you can't get to in life, but you could get to them through that. So if we wanted to
Hmm.
teach our kids, for instance, and we all wanted to get I mean, Sharif, since you're everywhere, whatnot, you could probably afford to get all our kids like these goggles, right? So these $4,000 goggles, you could probably get some deal. Like next thing, I mean, I just saw you in a picture with like Dougie Fresh, and I'm like,
Uh,
was it Dougie Fresh?
yeah, that was Dougie Fresh.
Okay,
Yeah.
see, I'm just
six
like this.
minutes.
This
Six
dude,
minutes.
this dude is gonna be like he's gonna be taking a picture at Apple headquarters at some point. We're gonna get us all these goggles. But anyways, are you persuaded by that at all? But by the idea that these tools are neutral, right? Meaning someone's gonna pick them up and use them for their purposes. So why wouldn't we be the ones that try and get ahead of these things and be pioneers?
I don't know, but I think that's the exact point that Ish and I are trying to make. But just like it's neutral, but it's also there are folks who are going to use it for something else. So like, yeah, if and I think it all goes back to education, not just education in youth, but education of our people, right? And so if it's a new technology and we can use it for good, like by all means, you know what I mean? Like by all means, but also having the kind of nuance and complicated version of understanding, like, hey, we also need to make sure that they have books and they're writing and they're at the end of the day, critical thinking. You can use technology as a part of your critical thinking, right? If I've analyzed Malcolm's speech, if I've applied it to today, if I'm thinking about what's the counter argument, if I can think about all of those things, and you're talking about like learning art, understanding Malcolm's learning art, and then also like, hey, now you're going to have this museum type of immersive experience with that. Like, yeah, by all means, But wh- what I'm also thinking is like, okay, if that's the cost of that, how soon before practically does it even get in front of our kids, right? It's almost like when computers first came out and started first getting into schools. By the time it got to 59th in Baltimore, other folks already had version 5 and 6. You know what I mean? So like just understanding all of those things and making that part of the calculus. But as far as like, like I would like, for example, I wouldn't want people to abandon the museum and only go with the goggles, right? Like it's like those type of things because I still would want them like interacting, engaging. Because as we're continuing to do this, it's also we see it now. The isolation continues, right? It'll be more people with less and less human interaction because like, no, I don't want to talk to you. I'd rather, just do this and be right. Like, and so we just gotta be sophisticated in our approach in endorsing it. And like, yeah, if you're technologically adverse to an extreme, then you are, going to be like, more and more and more isolated and left behind in other ways, right? And so I just think it goes back to like just this sophisticated thinking about how to use it, how to integrate it, when, um, and all of that. But like, I'm not like anti, even though I'm like, not proficient in most of those the things and toys that Cole thinks about, but his vision and how he's thinking about it, like I can rock with it. I just want to bring some of the old school and marry it to the new school. You know.
I mean, I saw that cat like he got him on day one, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
what he was thinking though from the first moment
Hmm.
that he put him on. He wasn't thinking just, oh wow, this is a great toy. He was thinking, what are the implications for this for how we
For
teach?
this,
So
how we learn, how we engage, like and when we're talking about like struggling to engage youth, like that's one of the ways, right? Like that's one of the ways. I would imagine recording Dr. Howard Fuller and his presence at some of Malcolm X's speeches and getting him to record, which Cole has done, right? Cole has used technology to record for prosperity Dr. Howard Fuller's thoughts and ideas, right? And he was at some of Malcolm's speeches. And so then having students analyze, okay, here's how Dr. Howard Fuller's feelings about, what he thought about being in the moment, and then also having the youth, all right, now put these on and you watch Malcolm's speech and then you're going to analyze how did you feel being, virtually in that moment, right? Like tons of man, all this stuff makes me miss a classroom. I would need a tech assistant, because I have the idea, but I'm like, how do you actually do this? What I mean, like with that, but like, nah, like it's learning tools, bruh. It's like saying like, oh, I have a classroom, our kids are learning, but I don't want no computers, and we're not doing no internet. Like that's like to me, I'm just like, yo, bruh, like what's the matter with you, right? So. We don't want to be like a caveman in the same type of
Uh,
thinking.
that's hella racist towards cavemen. But go ahead, Ish.
Yeah, no, I would just say that, you can, just like a beautiful curriculum, right? You can give it to someone, but if they don't understand how to use it, then it's useless. And so
Hmm.
the same thing with this. I think that, they'll probably focus on what makes the most money. So probably expect pornography to be the central piece that thing will
Damn,
probably represent
it's
in the future.
America, right?
It's America, right? So like even when we have these pieces of how full, yeah, you're going to have that, and that's going to be beautiful places of resistance and everything. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not going to make money.
Hmm.
And what will
Hmm.
make money will be the dominant piece of it. And then these companies that make and produce these type of things and sell them to places and districts and the individuals, they're not going to put Dr. Howard Fuller on there. They're going to be putting some nonsense about Thomas Jefferson's speech or something like that. So, I just don't I just don't trust it. I don't believe in it. But also at the same time, it also provides hope because rebellion lives in those who dream of a better tomorrow and
Hmm.
don't fall victim to false visions of history and what it was and speak to the truth of what it is today.
So I'll wrap my final words and thoughts. Has been a great discussion, fellas. But before I do, I will say um, I think you're not learning the proper lessons from porn and pornography. And I will say, here's the power of a porn mindset. This is the power of porn mindset. Let me tell you right now. So so VH1 tapes come out. So you have the ability to use a VH1 tape camera. Like you can put stuff on tape. You can record home movies and all that. What does porn do? Porn says, how can we use this? And guess what? They're the first one out of the gate to figure out how to make money off of this new thing that we've had for just a few minutes. And they've already figured out. So they're ahead of everybody else on the money making curve because they have a obsessive idea about how they can make money. Like they're always trying to morph into the next thing, right? So then you get the internet. Who is the first group of people who take the internet and figure out? And by the way, what I'm saying right now is they don't just figure out how they can use it. They were the first ones to figure out how to take money on the internet, how to do payment systems, how to do you know what I mean? Like they figure out, you put out anything and they figure out right away how it benefits them. I'm not supporting what they put out of their content. All I'm saying is the mindset of everything that comes out, figuring out how to use it to your benefit is a good mindset. They did it with VH1 tapes and then Beta and all that, Betamax and all that stuff. Then they did it with the internet when the internet came out. And then they did it with like AR and we're talking about these headsets or whatnot. Almost anything that comes out, they figure out within 5 minutes how to figure out how to make money and how to, improve it for their needs or whatnot. So, anyways, that's my full throated endorsement of the mindset, not the output or the content. Right? Like those are two different things. Two things can be true, right? That's what people say. Two things can be true.
You know
But
what?
here's
Sometimes your analysis is really scary.
you got to admit that it's true. Anyways, so here's my wrap on everything that we have talked about today. Um, I'm glad that this Black History Month we started talking about Black futures. I think it's a good pursuit to keep doing because I do think we have to think about an alternative future. There's a future that's already laid out for us. You can predict it if you just looked at the numbers today and you were a science person. You could just figure it out. You can see it's not the future that we want. I can guarantee you that the future that we are on track to have, we want an alternative to it because it's not very good. What does that mean? That means we have to start rethinking how we're going to have power in the future. So, what are our avenues of power? We talked about some of them today. Organizing is a power. Organizing for justice is a power. Organizing for labor is a power. Organizing around our collective interest in law and economy and all the areas of life activity is what we should be thinking about to get there and to do that. One thing that came up today that I said, I'm not toot my own horn, but this idea around like individualizing us and atomizing us and disconnecting us from each other is the first thing to fix. That is the first thing to fix. There are individuals. We are individuals. We are not individuals who aren't interdependent, though. And the world would have us focus on that independent part, like we're competition for each other. I think we should focus on the interdependent part because that's where all the power is. All the power is in us reconceiving our connection to each other and doing something with it. I hope that doesn't sound too flowery, but that's my analysis of this discussion. So, what's your guys' analysis of this discussion? Final word, folks.
I would just say it's what you just described was a Eurocentric worldview, and that spirit travels, and too many people have accepted it into their household, and we have to be very purposeful, understand that we need to get that out of our households and start reconfiguring us and ourselves, and that starts with understanding that it's poisonous, and a lot of people don't want to accept that truth.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, ultimately it ends up at education and organizing is a part of educating, masses of people, right? And so it is one and the same. And so I think that's what no matter what venue, no matter what time, it is tried and true. And just like divide and conquer is the oldest weapon against a people, organizing education is the tried and true form of defense of a people. And those two truths and realities are never going to change. And so making sure that we are not only keeping pace, but as Malcolm would say, racism, whether it's a self-cleaning oven or it's the new Cadillac and the new version is every year, making sure that we are protecting ourselves and advancing our, the righteousness of the struggle to be just, to be humane. To be loving and caring and compassionate, all those things takes organizing education. And with that, we also need to make sure that we're protecting the institutions. I want to shout out Dr. Yasser Shabazz and her family and team for supporting, and continuing Dr. Betty Shabazz's work, who had to just imagine Malcolm's teaching had to be preserved because the anti-truths were characterizing me in one way. Dr. Betty Shabazz had to defend that and continue, and she did that over years, right? And then eventually, 2005, they were able to establish the Shabazz Center. This was something my mother would make sure that we were going to the gravesite every year, and so she is teaching us who he is, despite what the technology of the day was, how he was being misrepresented. She was making sure that, and not just her, but like many people across the country were making sure that we had a better understanding of what his teachings were, what he stood for, all those kind of things. So this counter um, aspect of, miseducation. And so now, we have the Shabazz Center, had the opportunity to be there, and next year's the 100th anniversary, as Ish and I were talking about before the show, of Malcolm's birth. And so, what does it mean to continue to support this institution that is actually teaching truth about what's happening, what went on, what the future, Black future looks like, right? Because Malcolm was also a visionary. Malcolm was also talking about what the futures look like. It's like how they're telling us the untruth about Black people, right? And they were using film. Hey, here's what Africa looks like. Here's what African people do. Here's where your slavery started. Malcolm was a visionary because he's like, no, that should not be your relationship with Africa. That is not your, and then again, he was building on other people, or like what they were saying, Marcus Garvey, etc. Right. And so, like all of this, if we step back and look at it, we can see the patterns. Our job is to continue to connect the dots between those patterns. And so, again, this is March 1st, right? And so we want to just say, welcome to first day of Black History Year, and next February, we're going to be holding ourselves accountable for what have we accomplished during Black History Year. That's what this is about. February is about collective accountability. March 1 all the way through the end of January is about the collective work and responsibility. February is about the accountability. What have we done? What have we accomplished? How have we advanced this cause?
I love that. So next year it'll be Black Power Month, and
Mm,
that's what we'll make it next year.
hmm
This has been a riveting conversation, brothers. I appreciate you. Every Friday I say the same thing. This is like a gift for me because it actually helped me get my mind right from the week and then like over the weekend. So I appreciate that 100%. And for you listening and watching, please share this with others. That's how this works. It's a sharing economy. That's how we grow impact and messaging, is to be able to have people who like it and appreciate it, share it with others. And they'll take it on your good authority that they should listen and they should watch. So this has been another episode of Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you are freer now after this hour with the gang and me. We really appreciate you. Please share the show. Be good to each other, and we will see you next week.